It's Tuesday, baby. Exhibition hockey is here, and that means Steele and I are back for another big-time episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Tuesday edition features a look into what both Steele and I are doing with our own fantasy squads. I'm taking a look at the keeper side of things, of course. Steele breaking down the year-to-year. Thank you for joining us. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hockey heads and degenerate gamblers, welcome back inside the lab to your source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. On this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Steele, first and foremost, before we get into what is going to be an interesting conversation, there's a lot going on in the fantasy world on our side of things, and I think showing the listeners a little look under the hood today into what you and I are doing with our teams in two different formats is really going to help people. But straight up and down, we are two lucky cats for all the support and love that we have got from our listeners, from the Listener League. We are up to the top 10 in fantasy sports podcasts in Canada, and we couldn't do it without everyone's support, and even crack the top 100 in the US as well, Steele. And for real, I'm feeling very, very grateful on today's episode, and I wanted to start there because we do this for our listeners.
We do indeed. We do indeed, and it has been such incredible off season so far, especially this last month of September. Really, everybody just giving so much support. Again, we've talked about all the DMs, the conversations, all the reviews. Flip and I were going through the reviews just the other day, and just the incredible amount of support from everybody out there. So we really do appreciate all of our listeners. We appreciate everyone who tunes in. And we couldn't thank you enough. We love everybody out there who shows us some love. So thank you guys.
It's a fact. And that's why I really do try and come on here, just like Steele, prepared with at least a couple of fantasy takes that are really going to help your squad. So on today's episode, you guys all hear me preach about my keeper team, my keeper league. We're in our 10th year. It's very serious, and I love what we do year to year, and I think it's going to help show a little bit of insight into this side of things. So I'm going to show you guys, or tell you guys at least on today's episode, how my draft broke down. And very quickly, before I tell you my draft picks, this is a league that is not categories in terms of head-to-head. This is just a year-long totaling of points. Top to bottom, 16 GM Steele, and very quickly, 3 goals, assists, power play points, shorthanded goals, shootout goals, which was added, which I don't exactly love, but we're not going to get into that. Shots, penalty minutes, and hits. Block shots were just added. That's the skaters. In terms of goalies, and I know, Steele, you haven't heard this all before, so you're probably looking at me like, Flip, get it together on this side, and I need your insight anyway. Wins for goalies, shutouts, goals against, and saves. The goalie side of things is pretty basic. Yeah. But before I start reeling this off, Steele, I know that you also went through a keeper draft recently, and you're newer to the keeper side. So just from a general perspective sake, how have you been liking the difference between, and this is more of a general conversation that you and I don't always have, but I think it's beneficial for a lot of new GMs. Are you loving the keeper side? Do you like more of the year to year? What are your thoughts on that before I dive into my squad?
Yeah, I've always been a year-to-year guy. I've been running, I'm always with the same group of guys that I've been growing up with. We've been doing the fantasy hockey year-to-year leagues, for the last 10 years, like you said. Started, it's been going on. It's been going great. Last year was my first year being in a keeper league. Right. Honestly, had some great success. I ended up finishing 4th. I ended up getting my money back, nice. For finishing 4th. So it was good. Got my money back. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a learning curve at first, because now I got to figure out who my 6 keepers are going to be. Who do I want to drop? Can I trade draft picks and, picks and players for other future picks and players as well? I just did that the other day. I believe I traded a second round pick and a 10th round pick for a fourth and a Vander Kane or something like that. It was a
Right,
pretty
right.
sweet deal. I
Mhm.
was talking to you about that actually,
Yes.
if that was good. I can't remember exactly, but something along those lines. So now that I'm trying to figure out who my 6 keepers are,
Yeah.
who I'm trying to target now, who's going to be off the board that I can't
Yep.
even look at. I like it a lot. I do really like it. Again, trying to flip flop, trying to back and forth from the trading draft picks and where I'm actually picking.
Yeah.
It's definitely a learning curve, but so far it's been good. Year one.
It adds a whole different wrinkle to the approach, and I'll dive right into it, Steele, and I think I'll start this conversation with something that you already knew, but I didn't have a draft selection until the 3rd round.
Yeah.
There are 16 teams in this league, and I really needed to address my goaltending situation. I'll break down my whole team in a second. But what I wanted to do was move up in the draft. And what I wanted to do, so this was the trade. I traded a 2nd-round pick and John Tavares for a 1st-round pick, which was the 6th overall, and Drew Doughty. And I know on paper, obviously, John Tavares brings a whole lot more value than Drew Doughty. And there's injury concerns with Doughty, and John Tavares has still brought it offensively and fantasy wise over the last couple of years. Say what you will about his performance as a leader and some of those intangibles about bringing this team over the top, which I think you and I both agree he could probably do a better job. I needed to do this. I wanted to hope that Fantilli was going to slide down the board because it was Connor Bedard 1 for sure, but Adam Fantilli ended up going 2nd. So I have the 6th spot now, and who was left on the board, and I'll ream off my team here. I got Joseph Woll in the 1st round. You and I, let's revisit that conversation in a sec.
Yeah.
Then in the 3rd round, I got Philip Ronek. 4th round, Dominique Kubalik. 4th round, 2 picks I had. Anthony Beauvillier. And you're going to recognize a lot of these names that Steele and I have spoken about in recent episodes. Let me continue. In the 5th round, Morgan Frost could get a very good look at the number 1 center role in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Evan Rodriguez in the 6th round could get a very good look on the top line in Florida. If not, top 6. 7th round, Arthur Kaliev. We think the LA Kings are going to be pretty good. He might be in the mix. Jake Walman, Steele, a player that I think let's revisit because I know you like that angle. He should be playing with Moritz Seider on the top pairing. And then I round out my draft in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th rounds with Noah Cates, Connor Clifton getting me a little piece of grit on that Buffalo Sabres team. And I rounded it out with Anthony Cirelli, Nick Perbix, and Thomas Harley, a very interesting young defenseman on the Dallas Stars that might not be there just yet, but this is a keeper league. So I'm really starting to stack my draft board with good young players. But what do you think about that overall, Steele? I know that was a lot, but even hit me with your take on Joseph Woll in the 1st round. I know it's a little bit of a reach, but I also needed another goaltender very badly.
Yeah, and you and I have already talked about what I thought from the initial trade. I think you probably could have got another year out of Tavares, or maybe even a lower draft pick. You didn't have to send a 3rd round pick back for pairing him up with Tavares. But that aside, we've talked at length about Joseph Woll over the last couple of weeks. We know that he's been in the system with the Toronto Marlies, and he's produced, and he has the stats and the paper to back it up. Yeah. We both really liked what again, a short stint in the NHL, only like a handful of games in the regular season, 7 regular season games, and 4 playoff games, 3 playoff games. Yeah, so very small sample size for Joseph Woll, but I really liked what he was able to do in the regular season when he has played. And I really liked what he was able to do in that 2nd round against the Florida Panthers, coming in relief of Ilya Samsonov. They don't have a lot of depth in that goalie position. If Samsonov goes down, I know they went and got Martin Jones in the offseason as well, but I would much rather see Joseph Woll take that number 1 spot if, again, God forbid, Samsonov goes down to injury. So having him there in a keeper league format, having him there because eventually he's going to get his time to shine. I really like the pick in that 1st round.
I really appreciate it. And the thing is, I know there's some listeners out there probably thinking Joseph Woll in the 1st round. Let me ream off a couple of picks that went right after him. Jake DeBrusk, Hampus Lindholm, Braden Shen, Devin Taves, Phoenix Copley. So there's a lot of interesting names here that obviously, like Steele just said, when it comes to the keeper side of thing, you're looking at a lot differently than the regular year-to-year draft. But remember this, too. I've talked about this. Jake Ottinger is my number 1 goalie, and then I have a few wishy-washy options. So I'm risking this because I wanted to really get this guy for the future. So is it going to pan out? I don't know. But I round out my goalie option, Steele. I got Jake Ottinger as my pure bona fide stud number 1. He's going to keep me in this league. but then I have a few wishy-washy options. Like I said, I got Lucas Dostal. That could be a rough ride. I got Kochetkov as well, and who knows if he even sees the ice much this year. So my goaltending situation, as a lot of those listeners out there know, is going to be a little bit spicy. The rest of today's episode will continue to be the same, extra picante. I'll give a little bit more breakdown of my team very quickly. I'll let the listeners know who else I have on my keeper roster. I'm going to turn it over to Steele. He's going to break down some of his squad. But today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season in style. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We appreciate all that love and support. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all 4 major sports leagues, including the NCAA, your team every single day. And again, go sign up with FanDuel. Absolutely love what they're doing on that platform. Safe, secure, and easy to use. Same game parlays every single Thursday for NFL, baby.
Yes,
We're
sir.
going to lock one of those down eventually. It's going to hit.
Yeah.
It's going to hit. But let's get back over to the fantasy hockey side of things over here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'll throw it back over to you. We will talk about my year-to-year league in a little bit. But Flip, continue to tell us who's on your team, how you're looking at it for this upcoming season, and how you're feeling.
Appreciate that. Look, this is a deep league. And you'll see from my team when I read it off in a second, 2 things. 1, I have finished, aside from the last 2 years where I've rose up the standings, I finished dead last in this league, Steele. That's a fact. I'm going to come on here and a couple of wobbly pop-infused moves and some bad decisions. And
Carter
that's
Hart?
just straight up fact.
Carter Hart?
Carter Hart, baby. I traded for Cam Ward. I think he was out of the league already.
Heart, man. Yeah, breaks your heart.
What I'm trying to say is what we say on this show, it is not BS. I am coming on and telling you guys how I've been through the runner, and now I'm on the come up, and Steele and I are trying to bring y'all with us. So what I will say is this is a tough league. I finished in 6th last year, 7th, 6th or 7th after rising up the ranks. So let me hit you with the rest of my squad and the breakdown very quickly, Steele. 4 centermen, 4 left wing, 4 right wing, 6 D, 5 reserve slots, and 2 starting goaltenders. And the other thing I wanted to say is I have 3 minor eligible slots. So Fantrax deems players that might be up and down a little bit or at the start of the year look like they're definitely going to be minor league players that we can stash 3. So I'll just leave it at this. I jumped on the waiver wire yesterday on the first week, and I added 2 very interesting names. One in Zach Benson, draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres. And how about Cutter Gauthier? A kid who looked amazing for the American program and is performing at all levels. I believe he led Boston College or Boston University, one of those NCAA teams, in scoring last year. So that's the first tidbit for the keeper dynasty side of things. Don't ever slip or sleep on the prospects. If you can put your finger on something early in these leagues and have these guys before they even boom, you're ahead of the game. And I'll round out my lineup, Steele. At center, I got Sid the Kid, Boone Jenner, and Mason McTavish. On left wing, Carter Verhaeghe, Cole Perfetti, and the 2 that I added in Kubalik and Beauvillier. On right wing, I have Drake Batherson, Seth Jarvis, Arthur Kaliev, and Evan Rodriguez. And on the blue line, Victor Hedman, Darnell Nurse, Philip Ronek, Drew Doughty, and Jake Walman, rounding it out with Connor Clifton. And then on my bench, Sorelli, Noah Cates, Thomas Harley, Nick Perbix, and in the cage, Jake Ottinger, Kochetkov, and Woll. Other than my goalie area, Steele, I'm actually liking the improvements of my squad. There's a lot of upside here. You know what my main concern is? The Noah Cates, the Morgan Frosts of the world. Some of these things that I'm banking on this year, I might be a year or 2 off, if you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. It might be a little, hope right now. Pray it all comes together.
Hope and a prayer, baby.
Hope and a prayer for sure. To me, it's funny that you're backing up everything that you've been talking about the last year with Cole Perfetti, Seth Jarvis, even a couple of other guys that you mentioned. Verhaeghe again, just those three guys specifically, you've been talking about them for the last year. So it's great to see you backing them up and drafting them, and they're on your squad, and hopefully they produce for you. Look, last year again, I believe you came last in the listener league, but I am very terrified of what you're about to do this upcoming season.
Hey, don't gas me up, Steele.
You're coming hot and heavy. I know you are. You're coming for the top position. So everybody out there that's in the fantasy league, watch out for Flip. Watch out. He's coming hot and heavy.
Listen, the ladies at the LCBO in my town get a little bit too much visits from Big Flip around the puck drop, and then the wobbly pop infused decisions start to flow, and I start thinking that I know everything. Then I wake up and realize that my team's in last place. I get sad. I leave it be. Anyway, Steele, we're keeping today positive. Speaking of which, you've been crushing the game. This is why people should probably be listening to you more than me anyway. But why don't you tell me a little bit about what's been going on your side of things? Hit me with your year-to-year draft league and how you're feeling.
I'm feeling honestly great. I'm feeling great right now about how my team's looking. I did take a couple of shots in the dark towards the end of the draft. We'll get into my team. But the very first thing I wanted to do, I had the 4th overall pick. I immediately knew that I wanted to trade for another pick in the first round. I was going back and forth with this one guy from my league for a week straight. Trade proposals, just awful trade proposals, honestly, from him.
Check out Steele's Twitter if you want to see some more.
Didn't make any sense. Some bad trade proposals the last couple of days as well. Finally, after a week straight of text messages and trade proposals, I call this guy up. He finally answers my call. We get this done in 10 minutes. Simple
Old school,
as that.
baby, on the phone.
Old school. Get on the phone. Just talk to the guy. You can communicate it out very easily. Anyway, so I end up trading my second round pick, fourth round pick, and a 12th round pick for a first round pick, which was 12th overall.
Right.
An 8th round. So a first round, an 8th round, and an 11th round. So I got a 1st, 8th, and 11th for 2, 4, and 12. I thought it was a great deal, fair trade for both sides. He was happy with the trades. I was happy with the trades. So this is how the draft broke down. 4th overall pick, Nathan McKinnon, absolute stud. Yeah. I wanted Brady Tkachuk so bad. That's why I wanted to trade for another first round pick. So I went Nathan McKinnon and Brady Tkachuk in the first round. Didn't have a second. Snagged Alexander Barkov, 36th overall. Then I didn't have a 4th round pick. Then it goes like this. Dougie Hamilton, Stuart Skinner in the 6th round. Dylan Cousins in the 7th.
Yes.
Shea Theodore and Jake Gensel in the 8th.
I love
Shea, both my boys. I love Jake Gensel too.
Yeah.
So Shea Theodore and Jake Gensel in the 8th. Jake DeBrusk in the 9th. At this point in the draft, goalies were getting a little slim. There weren't a lot of top-notch goalies out there. So I end up drafting Jonas Korpisalo in the 10th round, Chris Kreider in the 11th, and then this is where I start to go. Not that I'm taking shots in the dark, but this is where I start to go with guys who are on the younger side, guys who have only been in the league a year or haven't.
You started to roll the dice a little bit more.
I started to roll the dice a little bit. 11th round after Chris Kreider. Logan Cooley in the 11th round.
Bang.
13th round, Jake Sanderson.
Bang.
14th round.
Jake Sanderson was around in the 13th round? That's a mistake.
That was a mistake. And his projections were very, very low. I didn't understand his projections. They were a lot lower than last year's finishing.
What's the deal with that?
It didn't make any sense to me. That's why I think he slipped a lot because his projections were very low. Wyatt Johnston in the 14th round. Jake Walman in the 15th round. And then again, this is where I took a couple shots in the dark. I went Jonathan Drouin because I was talking about him, pairing him up with Nathan McKinnon. So I've got those two paired up. Jamie Drysdale in the 17th round. I think I'm going to end up dropping him if there's another available defenseman right now, especially for the categories. He doesn't produce enough hits, blocks, and plus minus. So I might end up dropping Jamie Drysdale, but I drafted him in the 17th. And then my last pick, Philip Keedle with the 18th round selection. So I really like my team right now. There's a lot of other teams in this league which look absolutely stacked. There's a couple of guys that I'm worried about heading into the season, but overall, I love my team. I'm taking a couple of shots on those young guys, but I really, really, really believe in Logan Cooley. I believe in Jake Sanderson. I believe in Wyatt Johnston playing that second line center as well. And then we've talked a little bit about Jake Walman getting that opportunity now in Detroit. He's playing with Moritz Seider on that top D pairing. And then I've
It's
talked at
huge.
length a little bit about Jonathan Drouin as well and what he
Yeah.
can provide with Nathan McKinnon on that top left wing spot.
We are putting our money where our mouths
We
are
are
on this
indeed.
podcast. We don't just come on here. It's not lip service. We're trying to show you guys exactly what we're doing with our teams, maybe more success on Steele's side of things, but we're on the come up, baby. And one of the players that I think both you and I have really done well on jumping on is Jake Walman. And I
Yes.
know it's a very small sample size of production. The guy can skate and he has offensive skills and he gets to play with Moritz Seider, and this team is improving. Do we think they're there quite yet? No, but they are going to be better and they're going to score a lot of goals. So I'm liking what Jake Walman brings to the table. 45 penalty minutes last year. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
18 points doesn't jump off the page. He's going to double that this year. No problem. 30, 35 points for Jake Walman, no problem, because also, Steele, I think we can agree, yeah, 121 block shots is nice. 47 hits, we'd like to see more. I think you and I can both agree that Moritz Seider is going to be a lot better this year. The rest of the team
Yes.
around him, this should really help a young player that is still just, 22 years old? Not even 23. I'm not even going to look it up because it's been a long day and I don't want to think about numbers, Steele, because you know me and the numbers. Happy birthday to Mark Giordano. I think he's 65 today. But I'll just also say this. Some of those young players that you sniped, maybe they don't pan out right away because they are so young, but what you're
Yeah.
seeing from Logan Cooley especially already,
Yeah.
and I know it's exhibition hockey, but this guy is undressing NHL level talent already, and you gotta love what you're seeing from him, and we're already buying into the Coyotes. So I love your pick on Cooley. I absolutely love the Wyatt Johnston pick. And again, these are guys that you and I have been talking about for at least, what, 6 months, maybe a whole year. So I'm loving it, pal. I really, really am.
And we're going to dive a little bit more deeper into a lot of those guys that we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe, hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review, leave the comments on the YouTube channel, DM us any questions. If you just want to have a chat, DM us on Twitter. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. We appreciate all that love and support you show us. So thank you guys out there so much for tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Just to continue a little bit on Jake Walman again. This is a stat I know you love, but he honestly hasn't had that much opportunity in the NHL. He's playing with St. Louis for the first couple of years, but he was only getting 11 and a half minutes, 13 minutes of average ice time for those first couple of years. He goes over to Detroit last year in 19 games, 17 and a half minutes. Two seasons ago, 19 games, 17 and a half minutes. Last year, just under 20 minutes. So he's getting the time. He's getting that top D pairing with Moritz Seider. Even though he's not a big name right now, watch out for him. He brings those peripherals that everyone's looking for with the hits, the blocks, and the penalty minutes. And maybe, who knows, maybe he starts producing offensively as well alongside Moritz Seider.
I think
and then you know me with my strategy. I always try to pair a top forward with a top defenseman. It didn't end up panning out that way for me this season just because I went forward heavy in the first 10 rounds, 10, 11, 12 rounds actually. But I ended up getting Jake Sanderson. And I also have Brady Tkachuk. And I haven't watched a lot of Jake Sanderson hockey. I've watched his highlights on YouTube. I've watched what he's done a little bit last year with the Ottawa Senators. I'm buying into the hype behind this guy. Same. There's no reason why Ottawa would just hand this kid an 8 by 8 year contract. Massive deal for a guy who's only been in the league for 1 year and only played 65, 70 games, something along those lines. Again, I haven't watched a ton of Jake Sanderson, but I'm buying into the hype that everyone's talking about. So even though I guess he's not their top defenseman because they got Chabot, they got Chikrin, I understand that. Jake Sanderson's going to be the real deal. They talk about how steady this kid is in the defensive zone. He's fast like the wind. He can pass the puck. He can shoot the puck. So even though I didn't get that necessarily quote unquote top defenseman, I still got Brady Tkachuk and I got Jake Sanderson backing him up. So I'm fairly happy with how that panned out.
And while what you're saying is fully accurate, that's right now. What if one of those guys, what if Thomas Chabot gets hurt? What if something doesn't pan out with that top pairing? This kid is going to be anchoring their top pairing in a heartbeat. One, if an injury happens, and two, if he plays as good as you and I think he can, it makes a whole lot of sense that it is Chabot and Chikrin as the top pairing. but very soon, and that doesn't mean also that he's not going to get at least some good looks on the power play too. Who knows? Plays good enough power play 1. I am fully here for this take, Steele. You've been on point. You've been on fire. I love all of those draft picks. And I think most importantly, for whoever is listening out there, and yeah, the start of the season could be different. Yeah, some of those young players could not pan out, but everything that you're seeing from Wyatt Johnston, Logan Cooley, every player that you just mentioned basically is making me want to buy in. And in those rounds, Steele, that's where you can take some risks.
Yeah.
So I'm with this 100%. And honestly, I am so hyped for our listener league drafts, which are coming up in only a couple of days, baby.
Thursday and Friday, back to back with the competitive and casual league. Couldn't be more excited here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Again, we cannot do this without all of you supporting us. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. So make sure you're continuing to subscribe, follow, 5-star review. We appreciate all that love. Thank you again so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.